Okay, I can see Alex, who works for me there with the stripy top. She told me not to talk about peacocks' bums, but I put a slide in right at the beginning. So, these peacocks, I was on a farm in Chile, and I'm there with my 6-year-old, and there was peacocks everywhere, and we're kind of following them around, and they were molting. So there was feathers everywhere, collecting the feathers, and even the little white feathers that they've got round their bums have got those beautiful eyeballs on. And so we're looking at these feathers, and I just thought, I mean, rainbows are pretty impressive, but how is it that peacocks exist? Like, the beauty of them, I started to think, how do they exist? And I thought maybe the female peacock is like a deep time tuning fork for beauty, just kind of shimmering away through. Maybe a peacock looked like a pigeon a while ago, but it had a little eyeball, and it's like, oh, I like those eyeballs, and it kind of evolved. And then I started to think, whatever led to a peacock existing led to me existing there in Chile. So that kind of peacock juice is talking out my mouth right now and looking at me through your eyeballs. Anyway, I thought that would be a good start. So I've put together, it's a sort of midlife crisis talk. I put some of the old stuff to talk about where we've come from, and then this kind of moment of transition into the new work. So this is one of the first projects we ever did over 10 years ago. It's for PlayStation, so just let this run through. So when we started Marshmallow Laser Feast, it was all about playing with technology, having fun, experimenting, and spending all the budget on the productions. So this is kind of one of our first projects. We used a PlayStation Move controller duct taped to a Steadicam to give the camera tracking information, and then the entire world is built in Unity, so we pair them up. So the paper road cone with the little LED light in, there was a little switch to push that on, and we had to choreograph the sofa coming together. This was like take 40. Took us all day to get this shot. So, experimenting with technology, what a laugh, and like just getting into it. Then we had this opportunity to open an advertising festival, and they let us do whatever we wanted. So we were like, there's these drones, and if we could put mirrors on the bottom of the drones and fly them over the audience, we could target the drones with light beams and create a kind of choreography, sort of blurring this line between the stage and the audience. And maybe the whole thing could be musical, a bit like a sort of organ or a theremin, like boop, boop, boop. They said yes, and then we were in the deep end. So this is that one. Yeah, the music was One O Tricks Point Never, and he nailed it. So I'll let this play out. So this bit coming up, the mirrors on the bottom of the drones tilt back, and these beams are super bright, and all these hungover ad execs in the front row, they were like, oh, I'm blinded, and they're like curling their eyelashes. This bit coming up here, oh, it was so funny. Here we go. I mean, you could fry an egg on these beams that were super bright. Yeah, this bit. Oh, God! No, just... So, started to feel a bit like this guy. We're just like, the sort of rolling out of bed and being like, oh, what if we could do this? What if we could do this? What if we do this? And then in my life and a lot of the other gang, we started having children and asking this question, well, why do we do what we do in the first place? Like, what is the actual deeper purpose? And so it's something we've been dabbling with, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the key influences that set us off in a new trajectory. So one of those key influences is Richard Feynman. I'm going to just like ad-lib over the top here. So Richard, he's got this friend who's an artist, and his artist friend has got a really good eyeball for detail, and so he can draw a flower in a way Richard could never draw a flower. He hasn't looked at a flower deep enough to be able to represent it. But then Richard says to his friend that a scientist can have an even deeper appreciation of a flower because it understands that the reason the flower is red is because it's co-evolved with the eyeball of a pollinator. And this asks an interesting question. Does the pollinator have an aesthetic sense like we do? There's also all these hidden details like photosynthesis, the fact that the flower is able to generate its life force from sunlight. And so his point is that the more you understand about how things work through that scientific lens, it always deepens your sense of connection and awe and wonder. I was in a desert in Israel, actually, it was many moons ago, and I had an artwork with me, and I was setting it up, and I needed to borrow power from this Bedouin musician camp, and so he said, oh, they saw the technology laid out, had virtual reality things, and he was like, oh, so what are you doing here? And so I was explaining it through the tech. I was like, oh, this is a tracking mark, and it goes on the hands, and then when you're in the headset, you can see the world through the eyes of an animal, and blah, blah, blah. And he went like this, shh, and he stuck his finger on my lips, and he said, tell me, what does an apple taste like? And if you ever want to shut someone up, going shh, and actually touching their lips, they stop talking. It was brilliant. And you can't answer that question. Like, try and articulate the richness of the sensation of eating an apple with language. So just ask this question. Think how dominant language is in storytelling, in explaining the richness of sensations, the richness of experience, but how far it falls short of that richness. And another key ingredient here is our relationship, how perception can be expanded through technology. So from the dawn of time, if you look at a horse running, that's what it looks like. So this is the way that horses had been painted from caveman times up until the invention of the camera. And so by freezing time, we're able to witness something that exists beyond the limits of our eyeballs. No human had ever seen this sequence, but now probably most people are more familiar with the way that a horse moves through seeing it in slow motion, seeing it in the frozen moment, that if you were to draw a horse running, you're more likely to draw this, although no human eye has ever seen this except via the technology. So that's interesting. So that means that our relationship to the world around us is expanded through technology to the point where we almost see the world through that lens. The same could be said of looking up at the night sky. You know, to the naked eye, you see the dots. But we've also, in the background of our mind, have got this sort of evolution of telescopes, and the richness and beauty of Hubble is kind of there in the background and tickles a sense of awe and wonder when you look up at the night sky. But you can think about how that's expanded even further when the narrative tells us that stars exploded, creating these beautiful nebulas, and that's the building blocks of life. All of the elements in a periodic table come from those supernova explosions, and then planets start to form and secondary stars, and eventually those planets lead to people. So that story is completely insane, but it's the images that can kind of think of it like a lens. That scientific understanding is like a lens that you wear that expands a sense of awe and wonder and allows you to peer into dimensions that you can't witness with your senses. This is my business partner, Robin, and I just love to put this in. I try and sneak it into his presentations as well. Just going to leave him there for a bit. So virtual reality happened, and yeah, we started having kids, and we were thinking, wow, this is such a interesting way of expanding perception by engaging multiple senses. So let's kind of work through these scientific narratives to explore these ideas that are rooted in our absolute passion for science as a lens to expand awe and wonder. So we created this experience. It's called In the Eyes of the Animal. It was in Grisdale Forest. And for it, we went up with a LiDAR scanner. We 3D scanned a section of the forest. And then we just worked with scientists to understand what does that forest look like through the eyes of a dragonfly, a mosquito, a frog, and an owl. And the moment you start diving into that, you realize they've all got a different perception of time. And that can be thought of as like the frame rate of their reality. So ours, if we're watching a film, at 25 frames a second, it's smooth. For a dragonfly, they're experiencing reality at like 300 frames a second. So they're watching quite a boring slideshow. You know, when we're watching Pulp Fiction, they've got 5 seconds a frame. It's not just that, it's the color spectrums can expand and contract. In fact, it's all like a concertina. Time can be thought of as malleable. It can expand and contract, color spectrums, fields of view. And you start to understand that existence is made up from all of these interwoven sensory perspectives. So what we call a forest looks completely different from the perspective of a leaf, mycelium, frog, dragon. You start to get this web of relationships that is a forest. This is a little video of the artwork. So we took the science as a starting point. You find all sorts of weird things. When you try and explore dragonfly perception, you can translate from cameras that can see infrared and ultraviolet. You can translate that information into the color spectrum we can see. But when you try and do wide-angle lenses, it makes you sick instantly. You can't do 360-degree vision when you move your head. It's like, whoa, instant virtual reality, puke-inducing. One of the things we explored was putting a sub-pack on your back. And so that vibrated between your shoulder blades when you became the dragonfly. And so that haptic, as you took off from a log, really helped with this idea of embodiment. If you put the volume up here, because my dad's about to talk, and he's like the hero of the show.
Well done, dudes. What a show. What a show. Unbelievable. Very clever.
Yeah. Oh, you know that dad? My lovely dad. Very encouraging. We always get the cameras ready when he tries stuff for the first time. Because he comes, oh, what is going, wow, bonzo, what is going on? Love it, wow, and the thumping on your back. So there was a lady who was totally off her rocker. She had 2 border collies, and she was walking in the woods and didn't know anything about the festival. And so she queued up, she got into it, and she, first of all, her border collie's like, where's she gone? So they started howling, so she's got these dogs, oh, where's she gone? And then she was in it, and she was saying, oh my God, where are my hands? Where are my, oh, wait, I'm taken off, I'm in the air. So she narrated the whole thing. And then afterwards, you realize that people go on this journey, and when they take the headset off, they hang around for ages because they kind of recognize the log and that little swampy patch or the top of the tree. And so it raises this question, what happens when you take the headset off? In the same way that those scientific narratives can flavor your perception, does it leave this kind of lens through which you're more, maybe next time you're swatting a mosquito, you might be like, oh, you little rascal, just give it a little bit more time before you swat it. I did try to stop swatting them because I got closer to them, but I'm back swatting them again now. So then this led into this deep dive into expanding perception. What about the trees, the plant kingdom? You can think of time being the barrier between the animal world and the plant world. So what if you could accelerate time? And then what if you could see through the bark of the tree? Would a tree look more like a river estuary than something almost architectural and static? So we set about this project to make called Tree Hugger. I collect a few quotes on the way. I love this one. The duration of the beat of a hummingbird's wing is as concealed to our sensory organs as is the drifting of the continents. Kaboom. So we made this piece called Tree Hugger. And again, we're exploring LiDAR scanning. We did some research into how quickly water moves through root structures. So basically looking at phloem and xylem within the tree. And it turns out that if you, as the sun passes through the sky, the day-night cycle, the sun is basically increasing transpiration as the day gets hotter. And that transpiration at the top is like the sun sucking more water through the root structures. So you get this kind of acceleration of water movement in the day, and at night time it slows down. So that became one of the themes of this, that we synced the kind of day-night cycle to the human breath cycle, and that gave you this kind of breathing rhythm to connect to inside the tree. So we ran out of time and money. We had big ambitions, and it took us a while, and then we got, maybe it took us 3 years until we got to do Ocean of Air, which is like part 2 to the same project. And the technology had moved on. So like, here's Ursin. Oh, can you hear him? Anyway, he's really happy. You don't need to hear him. He's in there, and he's on roller skates, and it's a wireless tracking system. So suddenly, there's no freaking cables. You can just explore. And actually, the business plan gets in the way, but roller discos for this stuff is completely the future. He's gliding through a sequoia tree here. So I'm going to just take you into the Ocean of Air project. One of the big inspirations for a lot of our work is David Abram. He's just, he's a delicious human. We've been lucky enough to interview him a few times, and this is one of his lines. Breathing involves a continual oscillation between exhaling and inhaling, offering ourselves to the world at one moment and drawing the world into ourselves at the next. I've got a kind of breathing meditation thing here. There's a visual rhythm, which is a 5-second in, 5-second out breath. And there's a piece of poetry that we made for an artwork called Observations on Being. And it was with Daisy Lafarge, who's an absolutely wonderful poet. And I'll just let this play out. So breathe to the rhythm that you see in the visuals and just enjoy Daisy's poem here.
Where do you draw a line around your body? Is it possible to say where you end and begin? Perhaps you might point to your skin as a border between inside and outside. But what about your breath that takes in and pours forth into the world around you? Through the senses, we are threaded into this entanglement with everything around us. We imagine the sun as a dazzling sphere in the sky. But the sun is also bursting forth in the trees overhead and nourishing the cells in your body. How do you end and begin if sunlight is under your skin? If we could see differently, we might see that everything flows into everything else. That we are made of rivers, streams of life, surging across time. All you need to do is follow the current.
So we started working with Daisy as a way of using language to set up a context for an experience. It's almost like a sort of mindfulness element where you can kind of drop certain hints or thread certain narratives so that when you're having the experience that can sometimes be more abstract, you have that build up before as a kind of way of flavoring the work. And that's been something that we've been exploring more and more with the work. We find it's kind of a great primer for the experiences. So Ocean of Air, this was like this was a real squeaky bum moment because there wasn't enough money to do the project. We all had to kind of like put our houses up against the loans to get the show on the road. And the only way of it being a success was ticket sales. So there was like this rubbish little graph in this app where you'd look at it and you a bit like putting on an event like this, you look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, we're going to go bankrupt. This is it. This is it. And then the next day it's like, oh, we didn't have the money to do much social media stuff either, so we were just putting stuff on our Instagram. But luckily it built momentum and it ended up just selling out constantly, and it got extended from 3 months to 5 months. So in the end, it was like it was the best. I wouldn't recommend taking those risks necessarily, but sometimes, you know, you just got to like go full on for the project that most aligns to your passion, the peacock juice power. So this is the a little video of the experience. When you're in there, everyone is like Ersin on roller skates. Everyone's tracked. You see 7 people in there. You're all in there together. You recognize other people by their cardiovascular system. You can see the oxygen flowing into their bodies and the carbon dioxide flowing out of them into the trees. It's all one big real-time fluid sim, so you can interact with the flow of everything. If you get on the ground, you see through the floor to the inner structures of the tree. You can step inside the tree and it will carry you to the crown where there's rivers of oxygen flowing into everybody. And in some ways, by just making this process of breath visible, you really do blur the idea of separation between yourself, other people, and in this case, a giant sequoia tree. What was quite fun is watching people kind of get lost, and they'd end up like holding hands with what they thought was their boyfriend, but it's like Mrs. Miggins from a completely different. But you don't know, and actually when you lose the skin, you're just seeing this universal structure of like a human is, you know, there's no age, gender, you're just a branching network. So they'd be like, and when they'd take the headsets off, they'd be like, oh, just where's so that happened all the time, probably because the tracking system wasn't perfect, but you know, we tried our best. Do you want to see Mum and Dad? I've got both of them here.
It does involve all your senses, and I felt nourished. It's as if you're being nourished by the tree, and you see the interaction between yourself and the tree. It's incredibly moving to really understand
My dad's
the sort of
itching.
the process of collaboration between you and nature.
We are completely absolutely one with it. You are one with it. You're not the boss. You're part of it. It's just quite wonderful. It's terrific.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have amazingly encouraging parents. So yeah, it was nice to. I think there's a sort of an essence that came through in what Mum and Dad were saying there, where you can kind of, you know, create this experience. It's got no language in it. You explore, but it's really quite simple. And when we got like feedback we did like an audience survey and stuff, people were saying that the trees outside their houses, their relationship to trees was kind of shifted. How long that lasts, I don't know, but certainly part of the exciting trajectory of engaging all the senses in these immersive experiences is thinking about where the technology is now. Like Apple just made their worst ever headset. Where the technology is now is just a fraction of where it's going to be in 5-10 years' time. So in a way, this experience that Mum and Dad were in, that's like Attenborough with a wind-up camera going like, oh, there's something about these sort of black and white guerrilla filming going, oh yeah, can't wait to show mum and dad, and it's going to be great. And then think about where Attenborough is now as the technology to film it expands our perception, filming slow motion, going deeper into the ocean, drone perspectives. The technology to observe expands, and then our screens get bigger, and so that, you know, who's actually seen a snow leopard? There is this relationship between the technology to observe and our connection to nature, and I'm kind of thinking that the trajectory of immersive tech is a whole other step beyond that. I'll be able to put in my 5-year-old kind of be like, hey, dude. Oh, no, I'm going to tell you that bit later. I bet I got distracted. He's going to die. I want him to experience death. Maybe he'll be a bit older by the time we've done that project, but I'll tell you all about it at the end. When we actually made this after we'd made the project, because it looked cool, so I have to be honest on that one. But we do talk about all of this stuff, and we're trying to kind of formalize our approach. And obviously, you're tickling the senses in all sorts of ways. The emotional arc, the haptic narrative, the soundscape, the scentscape. And all of these ingredients come together, and it's so fun. Like, one of the things we found out was if you smell pine, so like, getting all these different, we're like, yeah, we need the pine, the sequoia pine smell. We're smelling it, and if you're in a studio, you think of toilet cleaner straight away. But in the same studio, when you're looking at a sequoia tree, you're in the sequoia forest. And it's like, oh yeah, the toilet cleaners hijacked pine. And so it just triggers. So, but it is interesting how what you see and what you smell sit together to kind of trigger the brain into, what am I smelling here? Am I smelling pine needles or toilet duck? So from being in Sequoia National Park, I wasn't lucky enough to go on this trip, but Ursin and Carolina, our amazing exec producer, they went over to the Amazon to scan some trees. And so part of the process here is engaging with local indigenous communities, getting permission, and going on a mad old adventure into like Mosquito Central. James, who's here somewhere, was doing all the sound recording, and there he is. And so his thing was, it was dawn and dusk were the best, because that's when the orchestra of the forest erupts. It's also mosquito peak time. So he's like, got his deep clothing on, thinks he's invincible, but they're just going straight through it, just like, la, 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 la. And he's there, he's going like, oh my God, each leaf is like a differently tensioned drum skin awaiting for a raindrop. So then he got into like, oh, I need to record all the leaves. So he's like recording, waiting for drops to fall on leaves, recording them. But all of those, and using hydrophones to get the sound of water moving through root structures, or like a whole range of stuff. But when we rebuild this virtually, all of those ingredients are spatial, so you can place them. And so now we've got this incredible library that allows us to kind of explore a real sense of presence. And you can also hear and see things that you can never hear or see in the actual forest. And that's like the key here, I think, is that it's not about representation, it's going beyond that. And so this is one of the projects that came out of it. A lot of our dreams are to really take audiences into fully immersive VR. And sometimes it's really tricky, like the business model, especially after COVID, Ocean of Air, like, yeah, Ocean of Air, then COVID happened. And we're like, yeah, do you want to, we've got this great project, we've got breath sensors, and right, what you do is you can see your breath, and you can blow it on, and other people can waft your breath like this, they can suck it into their, so it's basically a COVID visualizer. We didn't get, it just, things ground to a halt for everyone for a bit. So then sometimes budgets are smaller, so we're like, oh, look, we want to keep going, so sometimes we're, developing our tools, looking at inner systems, and selling them as limited edition artworks, so video editions, exploring prints. Our background is really multidisciplinary, so we love all of that stuff, but whenever we can, we like to just spend all the money and go mad in VR. There's another one coming where we did that. So in between, we're doing commercial projects as well. So this spa in Germany called Wund, a wonderful crew, and they wanted to do a space that was a kind of using technology, thinking about, they've got their saunas, they've got different rituals that people pay to do, and, could we do this kind of baptism in nature, this kind of forest bathing experience, and build it out within their spas? And so we've been dyeing, this flower is called the Queen of the Night, and it's, wherever you look, there's just so much, there's so much beauty. But this guy, it flowers for one night only, and the next day it wilts and falls off. And there's something about it. It's kind of like an ugly cactus. It's an epiphyte, so it lives on other stuff. It's not. But when this flower comes out, it's almost like condensed allure. Like all of it, it's like, right, tonight's my night. I'm just going to whoop, and the smell. But the mad thing, we were going to Kew Garden to try and find what flower we're going to look at, and these ones were opening, but they were like, no, you can't. We wanted to chop it up and 3D scan all the bits. No, you can't do that. So then we went round to all the flower shops, and we found one that was, they were like, yeah, it looks like it's going to open, and it opened the day we bought it. So that was I'm a bit of a hippie these days. I was like, it's a sign. This is the one. So we scanned it, and then this is some of the, so we had a little webcam on it, and we're like, it's opening now. So I scampered down, and I did loads of time-lapse photography. And then we chopped it all into pieces. We sort of 3D scanned all of the leaves, then rebuilt everything in Houdini. This is just, I haven't done a proper behind-the-scenes thing of this yet, but another part of that is in Houdini working out the fluid dynamics, because in the actual experience, which I'll show you in a sec, when it opens up, all the scent comes out of the screen and hits you in the face. So for the experience, essentially, the spa wanted this kind of meditation. So you would lie down and look up, and we explored 24 hours at 3 different perspectives. One I showed you before was the close-up of the flower. We explored one which is just under the canopy here, and another one which was at the base of the tree. And this was kind of our first dive into trying to explore the beauty of color change and shifting shadows. A lot of our other work is stationary because it's rooted in point clouds and 3D photography. And so, we're learning, developing new tools. It's all one big experiment, but we're quite happy with this. And the final project, you would lie down on this funky piece of furniture here. There were 32 speakers around you, so you've got all of those raindrops hitting leaves, the little mosquitoes buzzing around your head. We had to remove them because it was too itchy. People don't like that. And then there's also scent coming out this central column here. There's a subwoofer in there. So the whole kind of lily pad furniture piece we made vibrates with the thunder, and it's all sound design. But out of here is a kind of is scent. So at certain points, the scentscape would change. And I guess every opportunity we're trying to explore ways of immersing the audience. And so that was a good example of a commercial project that funded us to do an artwork. So just back on some of the inspiration, I got this book, Existence, a Story. And it's a beauty. So basically, David Hinton is looking at, the whole book is about this one landscape painting. And he's kind of going, all right, so when these monks were creating these paintings, they would draw themselves from the third person. And when they apply ink to paper, you start with nothing, and from nothing comes something. And the pattern of the cloud, the rock, the mountain, the trees, the rivers, the human, is all rendered from the same stuff. So essentially, there's no separation. Everything is just existence tissue. And everything flows into everything else. And I was like, yeah. This is what I'm thinking. So, in a way, although I'm approaching these ideas through the lens of science, this is the perfect way of describing this scientific lens on reality. In fact, one one conversation I had recently was that science can be accused of creating a really objectified worldview where you kind of reduce things to all of their ingredients to work out how they work. You pull them apart and you label, and you go in deeper and deeper and you pull it apart and you label. But that's one part of the process, the observation. But when you knit it all back together, you realize that everything is woven out of relationships. And so the objectifying is just a way for us to point at something to describe it, but it's not actually the thing. That the things don't exist. All that exists is the relationships. Everything, even like a rock that looks so static. There's that wonderful Carlo Rovelli. He talks about a rock as a kiss. It's from our perspective, it's like so static, it's not moving, it's a thing, it's an object. But it's actually a coming together and a pulling apart on a geological timescale. And so it's trying to get past this illusion of objects and things to recognize that life is made out of streams of relationship. And it's through that insight that you start to think of a tree or a mushroom or a frog as an extension of you, in that your existence depends on its existence. And I think that as an experience is different to something you learn in science class.
So I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment. We're going to do a little meditation.
So just put your fingers on your pulse and just feel your pulse for a moment. Now try and, the first thing is, so that pulse is with you from the moment that you're a zygote in your mother's womb. And imagine actually the thundering sound of your mother's heart as you're developing in the fetus, the whole development as a child, that whole process, the thunder of that heart that's immersing you, that rhythm. And then it doesn't leave you until the day that you die. And now just try and picture what that rhythm looks like. So think of it as a fluid dynamic. Just try and imagine the swirls and the eddies that drive that pulse. Okay, so if you open your eyes, we made this project called Evolver, which is rooted in the beauty of blood flow. And so it looks a bit crunchy, actually, on this screen, so you can't see the full richness of it. But we basically rebuilt the human cardiovascular system from head to toe so that we could explore the journey of oxygen through the body. And the idea here, when we were making Ocean of Air, we were kind of like, oh man, your out-breath into the tree is one thing, but the out-breath of the tree into your body, it flows through a similar kind of ecosystem. Each organ is like a different shrub. Like your whole body is just made of all these different systems and organs. So we were like, oh yeah, we could use the roller skates thing and do a human body the size of a forest, and people can just like roller skate around a giant human forest. But then the budget people got involved. And then we were going to do it wirelessly. And actually, the promise of 5G wireless, we can have 100 people in VR, 5G. And then it's like, oh, it's not working that well yet. And then so we're like pushing, and it still doesn't work. You get like 8 people wirelessly, unless you do the backpacks. But anyway, that's another story. We don't need to get into that. So at the moment, it's this virtual reality experience is cabled, but it worked really well because it's kind of like a journey through your own body. So if you could breathe yourself in and go on that journey, that's really what it is. It's like a stoner classic. It's like, oh yeah, okay, let's... bit of Alan Watts. A living body is not a fixed thing, but a flowing event like a flame or a whirlpool. So as we were like trying to get funding for this project, we do little sketches like this. So like, yeah, imagine it really big and you can walk around it. And it's like a big, we have 100 people on roller skates. It's going to be great. And then when we got the funding, which came through, in the end, we went to Cannes Film Festival with a demo. And then we got funding to make the whole project. So often we're just like knocking on every door once we've got the ingredients to try and like get the funders on board to support the artwork. So once we got funding, we started scanning. So Emma, my trusty left-hand lady producer, went in and got scanned for like, I don't know, 6 hours straight. Just like scan after scan, like extra, oh, you moved your hand, because it gets blurry if you move, you've got to be really still. And so we got loads of data, and then what we didn't have, we used branching algorithms in Houdini to add extra detail. From the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, we got blood flow through the heart, and that was really like the aha moment. In fact, I saw their video on YouTube, and just said, oh, I love this video so much, can we work with you? And they had an artist in residency thing, so they invited us over and totally embraced the project and supported it by giving time in kind, so that was amazing. We CT scanned lungs, did fluid simulations to get airflow down. We went a bit overboard thinking about it, but fluid sims, like how does air move? Like in the experience, you can make out the teeth and tongue where the oxygen flows through the mouth. The branching lungs, and this is the bit that my 5-year-old doesn't like. He doesn't get past that bit because it is a bit scary seeing the bones. So back to the, I'm nearing the end here. So I'm like, oh, Elio, so right, everything that's you is just like borrowed. It's all of the ingredients that make you are borrowed, and they flow, and they were in ancient stars back in the day that like vomited their intestines into space, and they're flowing through. And so life, actually, this brief moment of life that everything alive is now experiencing sits upon the death of everything that's gone before, and this relationship of life and death is just, it's essential, it's natural, and life just keeps becoming other things on that deep time perspective. It's constantly morphing and branching and feeling and sensing in new ways. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to give death a rebrand? So I'm like, oh, Elio, so what you do, you'll be in a forest, and you're going to lie down on the floor with all your mates in the school gym, all these other 5-year-olds, and you'll be in this forest, and then you're going to lie down on your back, and you're looking up, and then time starts to accelerate. Woo, day-night cycle. Woo, 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 woo. And at a certain point, the day-night cycle is kind of going, woo, and that's like that moment when you're filming a car wheel, and it's no longer going forward, it kind of does this thing. So the color palettes go a little bit psychonautical. And then like that train spotting scene, you start to sink down, and everything that was you could be in that evolver body, all the branching networks. You take your last breath, your breathing rhythms, sort of the heartbeat stops, and these new rhythms start to rise, rhythms of bacteria, rhythms of fungi, and you kind of unspool like a bath bomb, and mushrooms fly through your chest. You kind of sink down and spread out. And it might be a bit scary, that bit, but then once you get through that bit, then this kind of like breakdown of all of your ingredients start to flow into new things. You start to become cells in the body of new creatures. And I thought that'd be cool. So I want to make that at some point. If anyone's got a checkbook, Alex is down there. We can. But part of the actually one last thing on that is if you wanted to embody a forest, because in a way with these, you can embody anything. You can be a leaf in a tree experiencing the sensation of being touched by a human. Like, when you touch a leaf, that's one thing. But what's it like to be the leaf being touched? But you could also be the whole tree, or you could be the whole forest. And one thing we're talking about is, well, if you have, if your chest hair's like this, and you've got the forest aligned with your chest hair, and then earth blows on your chest hair, like that, but you see a gust of wind, and the trees sway, and you feel it as a sensation, you see it, and it all lines up, then it's like, I'm totally a forest. So you can explore, like, how if people can drive oil tankers, surely they can become forests. But I'm sure the budget people are going to get involved, but we'll see. Yeah, I can imagine the calls now, okay. Oh, anyway. So we've been trying to make this dive into the Wood Wide Web for a while. Loving Richard Powell's The Overstory. There's a world alongside ours, vast, slow, interconnected, resourceful, magnificently inventive, and almost invisible to us. So loving the work of Merlin Sheldrake, diving into that world. There's so many narratives. It's really exciting to think about how that can shift the lens on death being a celebration.
Our baby, and we're going to look after that baby.
So
never thought that
we were
plants
lucky
could do
to
that, but
get
we're
a commercial
finding in our
project.
research that
We were trying to
plants
raise
recognize
funding for the
each other.
artwork,
So these mother
but
trees recognize
we
each
bumped
other
into
through
this
the
guy,
different
Louis
organs.
Schwartzberg, and we made
The mother
the
tree
sequence
and
for
the baby
Fantastic
seedlings are
Fungi.
sending signals
So this
back
was
to
like
each
good
other.
R&D for what we want to make.
For once. If she knows that there's pests around and that she's under danger, she will increase her competitive environment towards her own babies so that they regenerate further away. It's a magical thing. And this could not happen without the fungi.
So I'm getting to the end now. Terence McKenna, he's one of our heroes as well. Nature is not our enemy to be raped and conquered. Nature is ourselves to be cherished and explored. Thank you.
What a brilliant way to end the day. I will never think about my chest hairs the same way ever again, so thank you for that.
Pleasure.
We do have the opportunity to take some questions. So does anyone have any burning questions they would like to ask? Please raise your hand.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm an educator, and so I come from a different field, and sometimes I look at VR or new technologies from a skeptical perspective.
Yeah.
What is your opinion about those who say that all your work is also might be detaching us from nature? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm curious about your
Yeah, so
perspective.
for sure the technology is, I mean, if a phone can detach you from almost anything, then what's a VR headset going to do? And for sure the people driving the technology are selling escapism. They want your attention. But technology can be used for good and evil. And I think like as a, if used in the right way, it can almost be like a ceremony, like a ritual that you do. Maybe you don't need it in your home, maybe it can be done in a different kind of context, but the ability of these experiences, well, firstly, the technology is happening whether you like it or not, so that's happening. So hopefully we're going to be a voice for reconnection. Like I was saying, what happens when you take the headset off? And this is our like compass needle. For us, it's always got to be not about escapism, but about reconnection to your body, to like the peacock juice and all the, and I think where that ends up, potentially you can like throw people into a kind of complex ecosystem simulation where you can embody different sensory perspectives, you can be different things, you can follow these sort of rivers that take you through cycles of water, breath, nutrients, and like the outcome of something like that, an interconnected web, could be like a game-changing perspective shift for somebody who's not had any kind of like scientific, you don't need any language basically, you can go through that journey without knowing anything about photosynthesis or thylakoid membranes, all the science stuff that gets complex can be translated to an experience. So that's where, we're going to be like a voice, but it's also terrifying. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was so cool. I was in Tribeca when you did Tree Hugger, and you're one of the reasons that I got into the whole VR space.
Oh.
So huge praise. Have a beer after. I was going to ask you, that was like 2017, it's 2024. I've been following this world for a really long time. A lot of great studios I've seen recently are kind of struggling, and I don't know if it's just my perspective or if I've like lost the dream a little bit. I really want to carry on believing. Where do you see kind of VR at right now, and what can we be optimistic about, apart from your work, obviously?
Well, it is a tricky time. I don't want to sort of paint this. Sometimes, so this presentation is the highlights, right? We've got all this other stuff going on where we do a lot of museum work, which sometimes it's much more commercial. like what you put out on your sort of Instagram or on your website and stuff tends to dictate the kind of work you get. So we put out the stuff that is most aligned with our passions, but we do more commercial stuff, like I say, mainly in museums, but quite a broad spread of different projects to keep the studio afloat. And it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's going really well. Right now, it is a struggle, like things are not flowing. We were thinking of ourselves as like the cherry on top of the cake. It's like pretty unnecessary, but you know, when the money's there, it's like, oh yeah, let's get those Marshmallow guys to do something completely unnecessary. But then no one, yeah, the cherries are not on the cake right now, so it's a bit tricky. But I'm definitely hopeful. So if you think about, well, the virtual reality technology. I mean, I'm not getting home and putting it on and being like, oh, I really love VR. But I definitely think that whichever form it sort of takes as it morphs and expands and contracts into new headsets and designs, if you're thinking sort of 5, 10, 15, there's going to be a moment where it really lands, and there'll be a product that, and it might even be that it's mixed reality, but everything I've discussed works for both. I think it's wonderful to think if a really good mixed reality headset comes out, kids aren't going to go to classrooms. You're going to go for walks in forests. You'll learn about deep time by doing like monk trail hikes where the geology speaks. You're like, oh, this is that rock and that rock. You know, so I think, yeah, it's quite exciting where it can go. And that maybe the essence of it would be trying to, like, it's that thing of why are you doing what you're doing? And for me, the technology is just a way to connect and tell those stories. And so, yeah, I think we're just going to keep using whatever technology as that expands, the ability to engage people on a deeper level expands.
This may turn into a rambling question, and you did touch on some of what I was going to ask just then, but one of the things I notice is that I think people in media do make connections because people have that kind of mind, but when you might be speaking to someone who isn't making connections, I kind of see this kind of communication as really beneficial. So an example of that would be, I was in the supermarket and I said I didn't want to take the plastic bag because a lot of plastic was ending up in the oceans, and the person at the checkout said to me, but that plastic bag is going to end up in the ocean. And I was like, maybe it won't, and maybe it will, and I didn't really know what to say, but it did make me think about how many people just don't think about what they're doing as a consumer at all, and we are in this crisis where consumption is very related to the crisis that's occurring. So I was sort of wondering, like, how you see this reaching people who aren't like tech heads or aren't super involved in media, but you did kind of answer a bit of it at the end of the last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, well, we've deliberately moved out of VR. So when we're, because virtual reality is a 360 medium, right? So you can kind of build your story world, but then you can export it as a full dome film or as videos, documentaries. So I think, like, sometimes the virtual reality is necessary to get the idea across, but you limit your audience big time. And maybe it's more about where that technology is going to be in the future and not where it is right now. But what you're talking about, I think often it's just like more traditional filmmaking and animation where you can reach bigger audiences is the medium of choice for that. And a lot of our work is now kind of going back to like large-scale projections and filmmaking, and as something that sits alongside this kind of immersive nugget that we like to play with. But yeah, I hope that sort of answers the question.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's all we have time for. But Barney, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for attending. Thank you to the audience, to the teams. It's been a really inspiring day, and we're definitely already excited for next year. So thank you all so much, and have a brilliant evening.
Thanks.
You.
Cheers.